Hi, welcome to the Budgeting and Earn Extra Money session. For this session, you will need the personal budget sheet, which you can find as a PDF on this page. So download that first and then start the video. Okay, so we really start encouraging people to start thinking about budgeting and actually start trying themselves as early as possible. That's pretty much because any mistakes that you make, and you will make them, I mean, that's quite natural, are much cheaper to cope with when you're young than when you get maybe into university or even into your own flat. Any mistakes you make then can really be quite expensive. And with the sort of cost of living rises that we've had recently, it's even more important really to understand your way around a budget. Because if you don't, then lots of things are going to be cut out. I mean, if you think about what you like to spend your money on currently, I don't know, but my guess is that this probably covers quite a lot of them: shopping, holidays, concerts, gaming, sports, things like that. And what we find is that as soon as things get a little bit tight, and there's no doubt about it, things are tight now because electricity bills are up, fuel bills are up, um, even subscriptions and things like that, small things that we perhaps take for granted, they're all costing more. And the first thing that happens as soon as things get tight is that the fun things disappear. And we really want to protect the fun because it's really good for our mental health. It's important for you guys to really focus on things that you like doing as well. So we want to try and protect those, and the budget will hopefully help us do that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but how much would you think it would cost to enjoy yourself every month? And that will really depend on what you're earning, I guess. And I would hope that most of you are currently doing some sort of part time work. And maybe some of you are just relying on an allowance. But either way, we're reckoning that an amount of about £100 a month could well be about the right sort of amount. And as things get more expensive, as I say, travel and what have you, we want to find ways to maximise the money that you've got coming in, and budgeting is our answer to doing that. So, what are we actually going to cover today? Well, we're going to look at firstly what a budget is. What does it mean? What goes into it? And when it doesn't add up, and guarantee it will not add up, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, budgets don't have to add up to be useful. What choices have we got? What can we do to get ourselves back on track? We're going to be doing an example budgeting exercise as well, followed up by an activity whereby you're going to create your own budget. That will take us about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to finish off with some tips to help you budget more successfully. So let me start by telling you what I think a budget is. And for me, it's a bit like a financial selfie. It's a little snapshot of time of your finances. And based on what that particular snapshot looks like, we can make some decisions for the short term. We're not going to be basing 2 or 3 month budgeting decisions based on what our finances looks like on any given Wednesday morning or whatever, but we can use that to help us think about what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. So what goes into our budget? Well, quite simply, on one side we've got income, and that's all different types of income that we may have. There I've just put 3 things down: job, student loan and allowance. And then, of course, on the other side, we've got our expenses. And again, very simplified there of food, phone and clothes. But you could add certain other things in there as well, depending on what your lifestyle was. Now, as I said before, budgets rarely add up, and please don't worry about it if it doesn't. Please don't think that your budget's not successful because it doesn't add up. It just means when it doesn't add up, you've got some choices to make. If you've got more money coming in than going out, well, that's a really nice position to be in. It's quite rare, but it's a nice position to be in. You can decide that you're going to save a little bit more. Maybe you're going to invest some money. Maybe you're just going to go and have a really good night out and a good spend up, go shopping or whatever it might be. That's for you to choose. More often than not, though, our income will be less than our expenditure. Now, that basically just means don't panic, but you need to think clearly about the decisions you've got to make. Now, there are really only two solutions to overspending. The first one is increasing your income. Now, this is where we're going to do our first little activity. So could you pair up, please, and think of as many ways that you can make 250 quid in 1 month legally without doing any extra shifts at work. Please pause the video, spend about 5 minutes talking with your partner and just try and think of the skills that you've got that you might be able to monetize to bring in that £250 in 1 month. Pause the video now. Okay, well, hopefully you came up with some nice ideas. What might your options be? Well, it would be really good now if you had a class discussion just to decide what sort of things you've come up with. And again, you could pause the video at this point if you wanted to. These are some of my ideas on the things that you could do maybe to earn some extra money. And that could be anything from just making a small business whereby you could go out and do a bit of gardening or wash some cars or do a bit of babysitting, something like that. Use your skills maybe as a student. Maybe you're particularly good at maths. Maybe you could make some money out of tutoring lower school children on maths. It's not forever. It's just about making some money quickly. You could perhaps sell some old things. Obviously, everybody's got some old stuff sitting around at home. You could even be a little bit more entrepreneurial maybe and start to find some stuff in charity shops that you think you might be able to sell on for a profit. You could think about upcycling particular stuff. Go to a boot sale, find something that looks pretty tired and worn out, and maybe bring it home for next to no money. Spend a bit of time, breathe in some new life into whatever it is that you've got. Don't even think about perhaps keeping it as the same thing. So maybe you could buy a bookcase that's only got 3 legs and some really horrible dents and scratches on it. Perhaps cut that in 2. Spend some time sanding it down, make a really nice paint job on it. Perhaps hire a little paint sprayer for an afternoon, which might cost you about 20 quid. Give it a really nice paint job, get some glass cut and put into that, turn it into 2 display cabinets that you could maybe sell for £75 each back at the same boot sale. So upcycling. Everybody in the class today should be able to do a little bit of video editing, either making their own TikTok videos, doing some stuff on YouTube. That's a necessity. Equally, making your own website is a necessity these days. You should be able to make a basic website using perhaps GoDaddy or something along those lines. If you want to get a little bit more involved, you could go down the WordPress route as well. And then there's something on there, drop shipping. Now, drop shipping and retail are often confused. Retail is a really expensive way to earn money because you need to buy lots of stock. If you think about selling one t-shirt, you perhaps need to cover 4 or 5 different sizes and maybe 10 or 12 different colours. So to sell one particular t-shirt, you might need 30 items available. Drop shipping turns it around the other way. Drop shipping is where you find clients and what they want. You source the items that they've got and you get it sent directly to the client. Now that means, of course, that there is no upfront cost, but you've got to think very carefully about why somebody would want to buy some stuff from your website rather than somebody else's, especially if it's going to be more expensive buying it from you. You probably all know a company called Gymshark, which is a sort of a high-end gym wear company. Didn't start off that way. It started off as a drop shipping company with 2 friends from university who wanted to make some extra money to go travelling once they'd got their degrees. And they actually spent an awful lot of time teaching themselves how to code for a really good website. And that really paid off because they found some energy drinks, which they managed to source at about 80 pence each delivered. And they managed to sell those for £1.60 each to clients through their website. It is quite now an old idea, so there's not too many new products out there that you could go into drop shipping, but it's a very, very low startup and it would certainly be worth a try if you want to go down that route. So there are lots and lots of people that you could look up to when it comes to earning some quick money. And remember, this is all about earning quick money. Yes, you might find that there is an opportunity to develop this into a business going forward. But these are some people that have started off very young and made their money very, very well over a period of time. And they've now moved on into the business world. But they all started as small entrepreneurs. So if you don't necessarily want to, or you're not able to earn some extra money, then maybe the only other solution to our solution to our budget not adding up is to cut down on our expenses. Now you're in a really strong position to cut down on expenses because there are loads of deals available for you guys. You're actually living in a country where things like parks, museums, galleries and sort of guided walks very often are free. I'm not suggesting by any means that the only time you go out you go to a park, museum or gallery. What I'm saying is if your budget is running a bit tight, you can still go out and socialise with friends and not spend too much money doing so. As a group of students, you're eligible to get lots of discounts, especially when you go off to uni. I would strongly suggest you go for a totem card, which will give you discounts on anything from pizza, maybe through to shoes. That's just under £15 for the year, and it will give you different discounts at different stores. Uni Days, something similar as well. Student beans, another way to save money in different shops. Think about Meerkat Movies when you're insuring your stuff in your flat when you go off to uni. There's no minimum spend to enable you to get your Meerkat Movies. It does give you 2 for 1 at any cinemas on given days. It's a really good way of staying up with all the latest films relatively cheaply. Think about going down a SIM-only route when it comes to phones. It means you can be very flexible and move to the cheapest ones that are around. Think about student travel cards, especially if you're living away from home. 30 quid buys you a travel card for trains. That will give you a third off of every journey around the UK. And there's one there for coach cards as well, which is slightly cheaper, but still gives you a third off of coach travel. And always think about asking and trying to get a deal, especially if you're going into shops that are looking to sell the last few items of a particular range. There's always deals to be had. Understand the way that shops work. There's lots and lots of ways that you can actually save a little bit of money. One thing I would highlight, have you ever wondered why bread and milk are never next to each other in a supermarket? They're normally separated by things like chocolate, pizzas, beer, and all the little things that we would like to pick up for a nice evening in. So understand how shops work and you can avoid falling into the trap of overspending when you're actually going for basics. Look at what free deals may be out there. Yes, there's some free streaming stuff. I know you have to listen to adverts. I know that can be a little bit annoying, but it still works out really, really cost effective if you want to listen to your music. When you're living away, think about using food waste apps like Olio and Too Good To Go. They will give you an idea of where stuff is starting to get very close to its sell-by date, and you might be able to pick up some food really, really cheap because it is near to its sell-by date. And then if you sort of tie that in then with learning how to batch cook, so buying those trays, 8 trays of chicken breasts really, really cheaply, cooking them up and freezing them afterwards, even though they're near to the sell-by date, they will be absolutely fine to eat. And they'll give you 3 months worth of meals very, very cheaply. So think about all of the different ways that you could decrease your expenses as well. So if you want to sort of mix up the two, increase a little bit of income, decrease your expenses, you're going to be in a good position to actually manage to bring yourself back from your overspending budget. So let's concentrate now a little bit on how we actually put this budget together. And what I would like you to do is just concentrate on 4 pots. So you've got a chunk of income, think about 4 pots of expenditure. The first one I want you to think about is an emergency pot. Now, as your life gets more complex, there will be more things that happen that you're not planning for. It's always useful to have an emergency fund put by so that when something happens that you're not prepared for, an example might be a bald tyre on the car, you weren't really expecting the tyre to be bald, and maybe you've got a slow puncture, you need a new tyre, 65 quid. Very few of us budget for that. So your emergency fund means you don't need to go down the credit route. You can actually pay for that because you started thinking about something that could go wrong before it actually went wrong. The next pot would be your necessities, stuff you need to live. And this is possibly your most important pot because in here will go a lot of your fixed costs, things like your rent, your food, your travel, all of the things that you need to live every day. The third part I want you to concentrate on is fun. I don't want anybody to feel guilty about spending money, having a good time. So if we actually put some money away every month just to enjoy ourselves with, we won't get a guilt complex when we go out and actually do enjoy ourselves. And the last part I want you to concentrate on is savings. So savings for big stuff, that could be anything from a new pair of trainers all the way through to maybe a deposit on a flat. So you could have different categories of saving in there as well. Now, I think all the time that you're going through uni, these 4 pots are enough. The reason a lot of people don't budget is because they completely overcomplicate things. So stay with these pots. Once you are really confident and maybe your income is starting to go up, you can add to the pots. Maybe you could put a holiday pot in, you could put a car pot in. Whatever you feel is necessary at the time, but cut your teeth and get used to budgeting with just these pots, these 4 pots. Now you notice we haven't put any money down. That's because we're going to assign a percentage of our income to each of these pots, and it's going to be completely up to you what you feel fit. Now at the moment, if you're living at home, your necessities might be quite small, but once you go out and live on your own, that necessities pot may be a much higher percentage of your income than it starts off as. So as a little guide, I'll give you an idea of my sort of first take on this. If I was earning some money, I might think about putting 15% into my emergency pot. I'd think about putting maybe 50% of my income into my necessities pot, maybe 25% into my fun pot, and maybe 10% into my savings pot. Because I'm using percentages, as my income grows, then the amounts going into those pots grow as well. But of course, this is only there as a guide. You can decide your own percentages yourself. So if I had 140 quid's worth of income, I would plan, and bear in mind this is a plan, it's not the actual, but my plan would be from my job, different jobs, and maybe selling some old stuff, I would put perhaps 21 quid, 15% of 140 into my emergency, 50%, 70 quid into necessities, 35 into fun, and 14 pounds, into savings. So that's my plan. Now I'm going to live my life over the next week or whatever period of time it would be. I wouldn't suggest longer than 2 weeks, but let's look at a week. And again, I've made this very simple. This was my spending for that particular week. I spent 60 quid on food and drink. That was to live on. So it wasn't a treat. That was just ordinary stuff for lunches and stuff like that. I did go out the weekend and I went shopping. Spent £45 on that. While I was there, I went bowling, £15 on that, and I had a £20 phone bill. I now need to allocate my spending into those 4 pots that I planned earlier on. So again, if we go back to our diagram, those are my bits and pieces, £60 food and drink, £45 shopping, etc., etc. Now, food and drink, I need to decide which of those 4 pots it's going to go into. And because that was my living costs, I'm going to put that into necessities. I'm going to put £45 shopping, I'm going to put into fun because I spent that over the weekend while I was out. £15 bowling, that goes into fun as well. And £20 phone bill, I think goes into necessities. What I didn't do was take anything out of emergency for emergency or for savings at the beginning of the month. That was a mistake. I should have done that. And I can do that really by automating my movements of money. So when I get paid, I can immediately put into my emergency pot 15% of it and into my savings pot 10%. I forgot to do that, so I've got nothing in emergencies. I'd spent £80 on necessities. That was the £60 food and drink and the £20 phone bill. £60 on fun and nothing on savings. So let's have a little look and a review of what we planned against what we did. So my review, if you remember, when I budgeted, I thought I was going to put 21 into emergency, 70 in necessity, 35 into fun and 14 into savings. What I actually did was put nothing into emergency, 80 into necessities, 60 into fun and nothing into savings. Okay, it's not the end of the world. It's not as ideal as I wanted. So next time I would probably do my emergency money and my savings money up front. But let's think about my necessities. I had my £20 phone bill in there. Next week, that's not going to be there because I'm only going to get that once a month. So that's my £20 that can go straight into my emergency fund the next time I do my budget. Yeah, fun, I really blew out of the water. I should have only spent 35. I ended up spending 60. Hey ho. So what I'm going to need to do next week is maybe spend a lot less on fun. Doesn't mean to say that I can't socialise and see my friends. But maybe we do a gallery or we go for a walk. Perhaps we hire a bike for the day for a £5 and we do a ride around a park or whatever it might be. Perhaps we just get watch a film on Netflix and get a pizza in and spend an evening in just chilling at home. And that again will be an awful lot cheaper, so we can claw back our overspending.
Let's talk about budgeting. You can budget for a period of your choosing, a week, a month, or a year, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Budget is like a selfie, but a financial selfie. So it gives you a snapshot of what's happening in a given period of time. And just like any other selfie, if you don't like it, you can put filters on it, you can add effects, and you can make it so that you like it. So let's explain. If your budget looks great at the end when you take it, then good for you. You can now think about options of how you can increase your savings, how you can increase your spending, or what you do with that money. If you don't like your budgeting selfie, you really have two choices. You can either increase your income or you can decrease your expenses. Ultimately, remember, budget is just about two things, your income and your expenses. So at the end of the day, what you need to do is plan the budget at the start of the month so that at the end of the month, you can track what's happened with the numbers. So how do you actually go about budgeting? What we recommend is to distribute it into 4 pots. First pot is your necessities. The items that you will be spending money on day in, day out, that you have to do, regardless of whether you like it or not. The second pot is savings for an emergency fund. This will prepare you in case of emergency in the future. The third pot is fun. You need to budget for fun because then you can take that specific pot out and not feel guilty when you use it for fun activities. And the fourth pot is saving for the future. And this will just give you options of buying a house, saving for deposit, or you can invest, and just gives you multiple options for the future of what you can do with that amount of money. If you're wondering about how much money you need to put aside for each of these pots, you're in control. You figure that out. You plan at the start of the month how much money you want to put away, and at the end of the month, you track to see what actually happened. Budgeting is in your control, so budget safely and do it regularly. Good luck.
That was Ash just giving us a little recap on what we were speaking about earlier on. So let's look at the overall process then. We started off, if you remember, perhaps on payday, we would be creating our budget. That's our plan on how the next period of time looks. Now you might be thinking, well, how often do I need to actually do this plan? I would suggest if you're being paid weekly, I would do one every week. If you're being paid monthly, I would do one on payday and one halfway through the month. So never more than 2 weeks. So create your budget on payday or sort of halfway through the month. Then track your spending, and you can do that using maybe an app on your phone. So I use something called Pocket Money, which means every time I make a purchase, I can actually allocate it on my phone to one of the pots that I've already created. And then when it comes to the day before payday, so at the end of the week or at the end of that 2-week cycle, then we do our review. How has things gone in reality against the plan that we'd created right at the beginning of the cycle? Then we can look at what we've done and adjust our next budget to take into account what we've done up to that. So I think that's a really good cycle and a way to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you an exercise to create your own budget. And you're going to be using the sheet that hopefully you've all got in front of you for that. During this, I'm going to suggest that you pause the video several times to give yourselves a little bit of time to work different things out. So let's make a start. So our real life exercise. You have an income of £2,000 per month. That might sound a lot, but you've got some fixed costs that you know are going to be there every single month. That is your rent of £750 a month, your phone bill of £45 a month, your bills, so your electric, your gas, things like that, which is £50 a month, and your fares. Now, if you'll notice, there's no food in there at the moment because we haven't really gauged how much we might spend. So the very first thing you're going to do is use the top of your sheet to fill in and allocate your percentage into necessities, emergency, fun and savings, and then break that down and work out your percentage against your £2,000 income. So pause the pot now, beg your pardon, pause the video now and fill in your very first part of your budget. Okay, so here's my idea of what could go in here, but yours, of course, will be completely different. I've suggested 60% on necessities, 5% on emergency, 25% on fun, and 10% on savings, which means of my £2,000, I'm going to put £1,200 for necessities, £100 for emergency, £500 for fun, and £200 for your savings. Right, so that's my plan. Now let's look at week 1. Now what you're going to be doing on week 1 is these are your spends. So £750 on your month's rent, we knew that was coming, groceries, Costa, etc, etc. Use the bottom 2 columns to allocate your spending. And I'll give you an idea of what it's going to be, and then I'll put this back up again at the end. So I would suggest perhaps our rent goes into necessities, our groceries perhaps go into necessities as well, Costa perhaps goes into fun. So you can see exactly how this starts building up. I'm going to go back to week 1 now and pause the video now and give yourselves a little bit of time to allocate these expenses into the right pots. Okay, hopefully you've done that now. So we can just go through what we did just before. You will have something, of course, completely different to what I've got. So now we're going to go on to week 2. Again, pause the video while everybody fits everything in to where they need to put it. Okay, now we've actually allocated our week 2 spending alongside our week 1 spending. We can do our first interim review. So this is where we started. If you remember, this was our plan. So now let's put some of our expenses against that. Now I'm going to suggest we had £1,020 expenses against our necessities, which means that I've got an extra £180 to spend in the next 2 weeks. Emergency, I didn't spend anything at all. So emergency has got £100 sitting in that pot waiting for an emergency to happen. My fun, I spent £295. Yours could be different, of course, because you could allocate it into different pots. But that basically means now that I've got another £205 to spend over the next 2 weeks. And my savings, I haven't spent any of that, so I've got £200 savings waiting for something to happen again that I can use. So we look as though we're pretty much on track. I think we're okay. You may decide that you need to change yours around a little bit for your next second 2 weeks budget. Take a minute just to think about what you need to do and then restart the video when you're ready. Okay, now we're ready to go on to week 3. And this is what happened in week 3. Again, you need to allocate this spending against your income pots. Pause the video again until everyone's done week 3. And finally, we're going to go on to week 4's spending. So here you can decide where all of this money goes again. Pause the video while you do that. Okay, so let's look now at where we are. This was our plan back at the beginning of the month. What did we do over the entire course of the month? We planned to spend £1,200 of our income on necessities. Oh, that was pretty good. We actually ended up spending £1,190. We've got just a small £10 over. Our emergency, well, I spent £60 of my emergency fund because I wasn't expecting that spare tyre to go. So I've still got a little bit of emergency money left over, but not as much as I started with. I've got £40 left. Fun, okay, I overspent a little bit on that. About £85 more than I intended to on fun. I need to think about adjusting for that next month. So I'm £85 behind my plan. And finally, savings. I've got everything that I'd saved, I spent because my deposit for my holiday, I was saving for my holiday. I needed to pay out my deposit against that. So I've spent the money that I'd already saved, but that's fine because that's what I intended to do. So I've got nothing left there at all. So overall, a pretty successful budget, and I can take things into account and learn a little bit more about what my sort of spending plans are and what my spending habits are, and build that into next month's budget. And the more you do these, the more you refine, the better your budget will get. So my real sort of advice would be try and do as 4 or 5 cycles of this now while you're earning only a small amount of money, because any time that you go outside of your budget, it's going to be really easy to actually get that back on track again. And we're going to finish off with another video, which is just 4 students or 5 students in a similar situation to you. They're going to be going off to their first year at uni, and this is their experience.
At the start of term, you make a lot of big payments, but then as it goes on, you get into a routine. You paid for your accommodation and stuff, so it's all out the way. As long as you know how much is coming in, how much is going out, it's not too bad.
As long as you know how much is coming in, how much is going out.
I don't know. I just document money that comes in, money that comes out, and I don't get too sort of anal with it, but it's good to just kind of remind me every now and then.
It's good to just kind of remind me every now and then.
Banking is really good if you like to keep track of your balance, and you can see more what's in and out, because I think without that it's kind of easy to just bury your head in the sand and think, oh, I'm not going to go to the cash point, I'm not going to check my balance, just get my money out at the start of the week, and then I know what I've got to spend that week, and I can control how much I'm spending.
Just a little cost add up as well. Like say you feel like, I don't know, maybe you don't want to make something, so you go out and get a burrito or something, and then you want to get booked the next day, and you've got to go on the train or something, you just forget that you're spending so much.
On the train or something.
I mean, if
you
you're
just forget that you're spending so
perfect,
much.
some people are paying at least like £5-7 a day,
perfect,
which
but
is
some people are
£150
paying
a
at least
month
like
just on
£5-7
travel,
a day,
and that's an unexpected cost because they never really calculate that. They don't think
and
about
that's
it
an
until they
unexpected
come to
cost
uni.
because they never really calculate that. They don't think about it
because you get a lot of free stuff there. All my stationery is pretty much branded free stuff.
All my stationery is pretty much branded free stuff.
They've got like really good offers on for students, and I think if you sort of get to know some of those, you can go and see what kind of deals are about.
Going on a night out is a really good idea just to say, just take out £20 at the beginning. That's all you have to spend. Don't take out a big wallet. Leave your card at home, take out £20. Restrict how much you're going to drink and how much you're going to spend.
And don't go shopping when you're hungry.
Drink and how much
Because you just literally just buy anything.
Because you just literally just buy anything.
Okay, so we're going to finish off now with some top tips to help you budget successfully. Try and put as much detail in as you can, especially when you're monitoring your spending. So even if it's only £5 for a coffee and a cake, make sure it goes in so that you can see what your spending habits are and you can take that into account next time. Make sure that you put that emergency fund in. I would suggest anywhere between 5 and 15%, depending on how you're getting on with it. Probably start with a higher amount and then cut that down as you get to understand your spending a bit more. Never forget to budget for fun. That has to be one of your pots that's there. Make your saving and your or saving for something big and also saving for your emergency fund, make that automatic and maybe put that even into a separate account. Set yourself up a savings account maybe and put that into your savings account. Then you'll get a little bit of interest on it as well. And as I say, make sure that you review regularly. If you're paid weekly, then put that in as a budget once a week. If you're paid monthly, do 2 every month, 1 at the beginning of the month and 1 in the middle. Okay, well, I hope you found that useful, and we look forward to talking to you again on a different topic very soon. Thanks very much.